Chapter 43. Minley took one step into the wall courtyard and then stopped. Countless red threads covered the ground like intricate lace. Interwoven in the red strings were thousands and thousands of small clay figures, each no longer than her finger. Like a spider in the exact center sat the old man of the moon. He sat cross-legged with a giant book on his lap. His head was bowed over two clay figures in his hand, so that the most that Minley saw of him was the top of his head. But she could see his delicate, wrinkled hands skillfully tying the figures in his lap together with a red thread. A blue silk bag full of red string lay open beside him, and Minley felt a shock run through her as she saw it. She had seen that bag before. Deep blue silk, silver embroidery. It was the bag the Buffalo Boy's friend had been carrying that starry night. She's the goddess of weaving, Minley realized. She spins the red thread for the old man of the moon. I knew there was something different about her. No wonder she knew how to find the king. The old man reached beside him for his walking stick, a bent, twisted wood stick, and tapped it on the ground. Silently, the clay figures floated from his hand, drifted in the air, then settled to the ground at opposite ends of the courtyard. The old man's thread still connected them, and the red line wove itself among the other strands surrounding him. As Minley stared, the old man looked at her. The silver hair of his beard seemed to flow like a glowing waterfall and disappear into the folds of his robes, and his dark eyes matched the blackness of the night sky. Ah, the old man said, it's you. Minley nodded and bowed deeply. She would have kneeled on the ground, but she was afraid of disrupting the clay figures standing on the ground at her feet. Well, come here then, the old man said impatiently, and he tapped his stick on the ground again, and with a sound like a flapping of a bird's wing, the clay figures moved, clearing a path for Minley. I know you have questions for me, the old man said. Every 99 years, someone comes here with their questions, but I will only answer one. So choose your question carefully. One question? Minley almost stopped walking in shock. If she was only allowed to ask one question, she could not ask the dragon's question for him, unless she did not ask her own. Minley felt like a fish gasping for air. What was she going to do? The memories of the hard work in the rice fields, her father's careworn hands, the plain rice in the dinner bowls, and Ma's sighs washed upon her like the splashes of water from the lake. She had to change her fortune. She must ask how to do that. But when Minley thought about Dragon, waiting for her patiently, it was as if she had been struck. And like seeds falling from Wu Kang's tree, images of the dragon rained upon her. Their laughter as they passed the monkeys, his awkward struggles walking in the woods, his echoing roar as he flung the green tiger into the air, the kind hand he put on her shoulder when she cried, and the hopeful look in his eyes as she left. Dragon is my friend, Minley said to herself. What should I do? Minley's thoughts bubbled faster and faster like boiling rice. Every step she took seemed to throb, and Minley wasn't sure if the pounding was her heart or Wu Kang's axe in the distance. As she passed the clay statues, she thought she could see figures of the goldfish man, the buffalo boy, the king, and Da Fu silently watching her. Minley's feet seemed to ignore her pleas for slowness. Like the kite being pulled in, she was being drawn toward the old man of the moon without delay. Before she could decide whose question to ask, Minley found herself facing him. The old man of the moon looked at her expectantly, his black eyes as unreadable as the night sky. Minnie looked down into the open book on his lap. She recognized the open page as the king's borrowed line, the smoothed-out folds and the holes she had made in it when she had turned it into a kite were still there. Yet, the paper was now invisibly fastened in the book, with only a thin line like a scar showing that it had ever been removed. And the words changed again. There was a single line of words running down the entire page. As she looked, Minnie realized for the first time she could read the words. Or really the word. For the line was only made of one word, written over and over again. And that word was thankfulness. And suddenly, like the light when the clouds move away from the moon, Minnie knew clearly what question to ask. There is a dragon waiting at the bridge, she said. Why can he not fly? Chapter 44. Ma and Ba continued to wait for Minnie, quietly and sadly. Even though they told themselves they trusted Minnie and believed she would return. Ma spent most of her time looking out the window, lost in thought, while Ba grew older and grayer every day. The only time they found comfort was in the evenings, when Ba would tell a story to make the time pass faster. And they escaped the Ba tales. They could not forget that Minnie was not with them and imagined that she was there listening. One evening, when the moon filled the sky, Ma spoke. Husband, she said, tonight I would like to tell you a story. Ba was slightly surprised, but nodded. The story that Ma told. Once there was a woman who had a kind husband and a beautiful daughter. A great mountain shadowed their home, making the land that they lived on poor and their house small. But there was always enough to eat, and the water always flowed in hot months, while a fire always burned during the cold ones. Yet the woman was not content. The woman begrudged the barren mountain and the meager land, and swallowed her plain rice with bitterness. She frowned at the humble cotton of their clothes and sighed in resentment at the tight rooms of the house. Day after day, the woman grumbled. When she heard stories of treasures of gold and jade, she was filled with envy. Why do we have nothing? She sulked in frustration. We have no treasures, no fortune. Why are we so poor? Her husband and daughter worked harder every day, hoping to bring wealth to their house. But the unfeeling land did not cooperate, and the house remained cramped. The clothes stayed modest, and there was only just enough rice for the three of them. The woman also remained unhappy. Her displeasure grew like weeds, uncontrollable and tangling. The woman was so caught up in her dissatisfaction, she did not realize that she was planting seeds of discontent in her daughter as well. Until then, her daughter had been pleased with their life, but now she began to feel troubled. The rice that filled their bowls began to taste bland. The clothes she had liked for their colors now felt rough, and the house that she had run freely around in had become stifling. Finally, unable to bear the growing frustration, the daughter stole away in the middle of the night. Vowing not to return until she could bring a fortune back to her family. And it was only then that the woman saw the stupidity of her behavior. For without her daughter, the house became too large and empty, and she was not hungry for the extra rice. As the days passed in loneliness, fear, and worry, the woman cursed herself for her selfishness and foolishness. How lucky she had been. She was at last able to see that her daughter's laughter and love could not be improved by having the finest clothes or jewels. That joy had been in her home like a gift waiting to be opened. The woman wept tears for which there was no comfort. For all the time that she had been longing for treasures, she had already had the one most precious. Now wiser, the woman could do nothing but go to her husband, beg forgiveness for her actions, and hope someday to do the same with her daughter. She did not know if she would receive compassion from either, but she vowed she would wait for it. If necessary, she would wait like the mountain that shadowed them. As Ma finished, she sat herself down at Ba's feet, and like a child, she placed her head in his lap. "Husband," she said, "I have said that it was your fault that Minley ran away, and I was wrong. I am to blame. Minley knew I was discontent with our fortune. If I had not been, she would not have left. I am sorry." Ba could not speak. The moon outside was so full it looked as if it would burst, and moistness damped his eyes. He placed his hand tenderly on Ma's head. "Ah, good," the fish said. "If you make happy those that are near, those that are far will come." Ma's head raised in a jerk. She looked over at the fish and then looked at Ba, her eyes wide. "Did the fish say something?" she asked. Chapter 45. The dragon waited. Mornings rose, nights fell, but he did not move from the bridge. Every night the stars filled the sky like snowflakes falling on black stone and then melted away as the sun mounted. When the sun rose, the red strings of the bridge seemed to melted into the sky, and the bridge seemed to disappear, only showing itself again at night. A stinging wind blew in a silver mist, and the cold rock was hard and unyielding. Still, the dragon waited. But on the third night, just as the moon began to slip down in the sky, Dragon saw a faint figure on the bridge. With a joyous roar, the dragon jumped up and the figure became clearer and clearer. "Minley, you are back," Dragon shouted. "Did you see him? Did you ask the old man of the moon my questions?" "Yes," Minley laughed as she hugged the dragon. "I asked him, and he answered. So now I know how you can fly." "How?" Minley climbed onto the dragon's back. With both hands, she clenched the stone ball above his head. "Take a deep breath," she said to him, and with a jerk that took all of her strength, she yanked the ball off his head. "Ouch!" the dragon yelped. But then he began to smile. "I feel so light," he said, "so light and peaceful." "The old man of the moon said you would not be able to fly until the ball was removed from your head," Minley told him. "He said it was weighing you down." "It was." Dragon laughed, and Minley clutched his neck with her spare arm as he rose into the air. The wind seemed to join their whoop of laughter and sweep them up into the sky as the dragon flew for the first time. The silver clouds embraced him and then parted as the dragon flew through as if he were rippling the sky. The pale moon looked as if it were smiling at them with a soft glow. As they skimmed the stars, Minley closed her eyes with delight. As they returned to the ground, the dragon asked, "What about you? Did the old man tell you how to change your fortune?" Minley was silent. Dragon turned to look at her. "What happened?" he asked. "He did not tell you?" "I didn't ask," Minley said. "I was only allowed one question." "What?" the dragon said. "You need to know. You have come all this way. We will fly back and you can ask him." But before Minley could utter a protest, the red cord bridge seemed to shrink, And as they turned to look at it, the bamboo stakes began to rip the ground, leaving ugly slashes as the bridge was dragged away from the land. The bridge jerked violently, the bamboo supports clattering as it was pulled up into the darkness. "The old man of the moon will not see me again," Minley said. "He won't answer any question for another 99 years. "But you," the dragon sputtered, "your fortune, your parents." "It's all right," Minley told him. "When it was time for me to choose, I suddenly saw I didn't have to ask it." "You did not?" the dragon said. "No," Minley said. And suddenly memories rushed through her. She heard the buffalo's boy laughter as he refused her money, saw the king's generous smile as he willingly parted with his family's treasure, and remembered Dafu's last words to her. "Why would we want to change our fortune?" they had said. She had shaken her head in confusion then, but now finally Minley understood it, all of it. Fortune was not a house full of gold and jade, but something much more. Something she already had and did not need to change. "I didn't ask the question," Minley said again and smiled, "because I don't need to know the answer."